I want to take a moment to begin this video and talk about this struggle we're having with this channel. It's really kind of the way that gun channels are interacting with Google and YouTube is affecting us, and it's affecting our ability to be able to produce content. So I want to take a moment and just ask you, support us on Patreon, where a lot of the content we can't put here is going, and it supports this ministry. Division in this country is just getting deeper and deeper, with many people even throwing around the words civil war. So what does this actually mean, and who would win a civil war? Obviously, you can't predict who would win a war, but there are definitely variables that point towards somebody winning, and there's definitely some in this country. So we're just going to look at kind of a lot of the variables. Who are the winners? Who are the losers? What's this actually look like? Well, let's kind of start with, if you looked at the last Civil War, at the time in 1860, there was an estimated 31,443,321 people in the United States based off of the 1860 census. During the Civil War, following, an estimated 650,000 Americans were killed. Now, so if you look at a density of 31 million and 650,000 are killed, and you're using guns that are on average one shot, that isn't very necessarily accurate. Every 40 seconds, you lose 650,000 American lives. Now we have 334,233,854 people. So obviously a much, much more denser country. Add a zero to it is ultimately what you did. Now combine that with the average American rifle today shooting 40 extremely accurate shots per minute. Potentially add a zero to that 650,000 is probably a reasonable prediction of the amount of deaths that would take place. So let's start with everybody loses. Let's start with that. But is there actually somebody that comes out the other end in charge of this country? Well, you'd have to look at the side that the U.S. military is on. Now, ultimately, the military, if they hold true to their rules and regulations, they're going to side with the U.S. president. Now, this is confusing because if the U.S. president is left or right, this is going to be some variables as well, because typically the U.S. military, if you did a kind of a census of the U.S. military, how many, are you a Democrat, are you a Republican? Or are you a libertarian? Are you other? What you find is 49% of U.S. military traditionally are Republicans, with only 14% being Democrats, 28% claiming to be independents, and the rest are libertarians and other. So ultimately, you have kind of a mix. If it was just Democrats or Republicans, it's way more Republicans than Democrats. But then, of course, you also have, 50%. More than 50% are not Republicans. So it's hard to say who they would side with. But ultimately, whoever the military sides with is going to win. They're definitely going to win, because there's no militias in this country that are going to be able to pull anything together that could defeat a military. Now, if military started breaking apart, let's just say, military started breaking apart. So I'm saying, I'm not going to fight for this cause. I'm going to go fight for that cause. What you're looking at is that the left is really kind of more anti-police, anti-military, and the right is pro-military typically. So what you're going to see in addition to that is the left is very anti-masculinity. They kind of discourage being a strong man. So anybody who wants to be a strong man is typically going to be on the side of the Republicans. Typically, this is just the culture we're seeing today. Now, of course, you also have state National Guards to deal with, and of course, California, New York, New Jersey, place like that. Now, let's just say that the military splits somewhat evenly. Let's just say that happens, because if the military stays together, whoever the military side the military's on is going to win. And if the president in office is a Democrat, they're probably going to control most of the military. If the President is Republican. They're probably going to control most of the military. So it ultimately depends on who the president is at that time. Now, if the rest of them just split, what you're looking at, like if states split, the military splits, you just kind of look at everybody splits, kind of like they did in the Civil War. At this point, what you're looking at is the entire middle of the country is controlled by the right. Now, what's in the middle? All of the resources, the food, the water, the oil, the electricity. You can go on and on. The red counties control those things, which leaves, of course, now you got like California, New York, now you got the biggest economies in the world. So here, what you're being, and access to ocean. So of course they're going to, they're feeding the economy of the world. So they're going to be fed by the world. They're not just all of a sudden not going to have supplies, but they're going to be fed by the world. But they're going to be shut down pretty darn quick. But what else is coming from California? Technology, things like that. So ultimately what you're going to have is you're going to have the middle running all the resources of the country, the red states running all the resources of the country, and the blue states controlling the economy of the country and the technology of the country. In the end, it also depends on what other countries get involved with this thing, because they're going to get involved. The world's economy depends on the U.S. and it depends on those coastal states to feed the economy of this world. But in the end, who I believe will be the victor is just like we see in Europe right now. We see the resilience of Ukraine standing up to a giant Russia and doing a pretty good job whooping up on them, is what it sounds like. Now, why? Well, because they are warriors. They're standing up for things they believe in. Here is the trouble with one side. The left, again, I kind of mentioned this, but this is really who's going to determine. If everything splits evenly and, all things equal, the difference is the sense of what's going on in your head. The left are really mostly social warriors. They're not physical warriors. They're social warriors. They don't really necessarily want to do anything hard, is what a lot of this generation looks like. They look at masculinity as if it is just this toxic, terrible thing. So they're trying to alienate strong men. So they're alienating strong men. That is not smart. If you're thinking that you're wanting to maybe pull together some people for some sort of physical engagement, you can't alienate the strong men. I'm sorry. And I know there's a lot of people saying, well, wait a second, you can't, that's offensive. Sorry, it's war. It's the reality of war. You need strong men to be successful in war. And men who are dedicated to a cause. Again, like we see over in Europe, we see one side that's just being thrown at it and they don't really want to be there, and the other side's there to defend their homes. So what's going on in the mind matters, and people who are social warriors who hate masculinity and that kind of thing, it's, again, that's, in a normal world, that probably wouldn't necessarily mean you're going down, but in a warfare scenario, that's kind of what it means. I just don't think that the left has any real value to wage a serious war. I just don't think they do. So in the end, I believe, if all things are equal, you got the right. But all things, again, are not equal. And I think ultimately everybody loses. I believe that number of the first Civil War, that 650,000, I think you throw a zero on it, is what you're going to be dealing with. It's going to be a mess, just unlike anything maybe this world has ever seen before, because there aren't clear lines. There's no clear boundaries. There's a lot of blue people in red places, and there's a lot of red people in blue places. There's mix. There's blue cities and red states. There's red cities and blue states. It's a huge mix, and in the end, everybody is going to lose. It just will be a bloodbath. The density of this country it's just too dense. Within months, it'll just be a bloodbath, you know, with no boundaries. You know, the thing that you have over in most wars in Europe is you have boundaries. You have clear lines. People have drawn lines. You can't cross this line. There's just no lines like that here. Other than the division of the middle, you got all the red states, the outside, you got all the blue states. Maybe people flee to whichever side they want. And in that case, then one controls the resources, one controls the economy and the technology. And at that point, who else is helping? Who else are you going to get to help? Because you're going to need outside help, just like in the Civil War, they needed outside help. Which kind of leads to the bigger question, how would it all play out? That'll be another video. So I hope this helps. Any thoughts or insight? These are just some, my variables that I'm throwing out there. Obviously, you can't predict a winner here. And in the end, I kind of said it before. I don't think there is a winner in this one. Any thoughts or insight? Put it below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. Feel called to support this channel with Patreon. That link is also below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests. So please don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.